Hey folks, this is Rabble Rouse and Rich Bergeron.
Tornado Tony Pennicow.
And Psychic Tom Pheasant. In for the weekend with breathless anticipation. See if his predictions will be true, as they always are.
Well, just to quickly recap, we talked about the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder fight, and we think it'll be a repeat of the same if Fury can stay away from getting hit with that devastating right hand.
Right. And I think both fighters have learned a little bit, but it could end up being sort of the same thing. My thought is 4 rounds is what Deontay has to get the job done and knock him out. If it doesn't happen in those 4 rounds, it's going the distance. And I think Fury's got the skills and the experience to make it work and get the decision. But Tony will have the full in-depth preview to us pretty shortly, in a couple days here. And
I will finish it tomorrow at work while I'm not actually doing any work.
There we go. We also just talked about Bryant Perella. Had a really crazy ending to his fight. With just 1 second left, the referee stopped the fight, and we were comparing that to last time we knew it happened. Which
go back and you look at it. I mean, and it's funny because we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of the Chavez-Taylor controversial ending. But, Perella goes down, and he gets up, and all he had to do was basically just put his hands up. All he had to do. But he staggered forward and almost going into the ropes, and Jack Reese, who's one of the best in the world, stopped the fight.
Right. So his opponent, Abel Ramos, got the win, and it turned into one of those situations where you never thought it would happen again. That fight with Meldrick Taylor and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., we actually interviewed Richard Steele a little bit about that. And the other guy we talked about it with was Lou Duva, who was managing and training Meldrick at the time. So we got quite the perspective on that one. So this was kind of a repeat of that. I don't know if it's ever happened in other major fights like that, or else we probably would have heard about it, but I couldn't help think about Meldrick Taylor. Also in the news, Justin Bieber versus Tom Cruise back in the news. Justin Bieber doubled down on his claim that he could wallop the 57-year-old Mission Impossible star in a fight. In Wednesday's episode of Carpool Karaoke on the Late Late Show. He's only 25 years old, so picking on a guy who's almost 60, I don't know. But he did challenge him last year to an MMA fight.
Imagine the humiliation of losing a fight to Justin Bieber.
Right.
That would be utter humiliation. I don't care if I'm in the old soldiers' home. Come on. My God. But I'll tell you what, I'd love to see it. What a freak show that would be.
Yeah. Well, there's a joke going around about Justin Bieber's bodyguard suing him for beating him up or something like that, for hitting him. And it was like, why would you be hired as Justin Bieber's bodyguard if Justin Bieber can beat you up? It's not cool. And now here's a good story. We've been talking a lot on this show the last few years about the escapades this guy has been involved in. Usually it's nothing good. I think the last time it was a drunken altercation with a cab driver. And he's had big struggles with drinking and everything like that. I don't know what his status with that is right now, but I'm talking about Kelly Pavlik. He is right now making some good news because after retiring at the age of 30, he opened and owns something called My Gym, M-I Gym, in Columbiana County. He has a podcast called The Punchline with James Dominguez, and this year he created a workout app with world title challenger Billy Lyell called The Sweet Science Plus. So now his focus is helping kids and introducing them to the sport. So he's got a plan to get a new boxing gym and involve kids in it, give them a work ethic, monitor their schoolwork, have them do chores in the gym, And he says we'll have some programs for them. Again, we'll monitor their grades and make sure they're staying out of trouble. That's a big part of it also. A lot of kids don't have structure in life, and I think what we're going to bring here, these kids are going to have chores to do at the gym. Their grades are going to be, we're going to have somebody watching and keeping an eye on that, and then the grades are going to have to be par or passing for them to compete. We're going to work on having motivational speakers there a couple times throughout the year. Boxing is an important sport. It does a lot for people. It gave me a lot, and it gave me an opportunity to do the things I want to do now, and the opportunity to do things like this charitable organization to where I came to help out. And he's going to be hosting an event on April 25th to raise funds for this nonprofit. And I'll also have a webpage up soon. So we'll keep people abreast of that situation. Here's an interesting one about the coronavirus. Asia and mostly China are having a huge issue with this coronavirus, killing a lot of people. I think it's over 1,000 now, almost 2,000. So one championship over there in Singapore has announced that they're going to have a fight in an empty arena because of this. They don't want any coronavirus spreading. So that anybody who has a ticket to this King of the Jungle event will be refunded in full, and the event will still be broadcast to more than 150 countries, but we're going to fight in an empty arena, which will be kind of like fighting in Japan, from what I hear. It's a very quiet crowd. And I don't know if you guys have, obviously you probably have watched Family Feud, but I don't know if you guys have heard about this. There's going to be a family feud involving boxers and MMA fighters. Which is kind of interesting because they've got boxers from every promotion and all different walks of life, but all the MMA fighters are strictly UFC guys and one girl, Holly Holm. No, two girls, Holly Holm and Karate Hottie. Karate Hottie. So the UFC team is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Henry Cejudo, Holly Holm, Forrest Griffin, and Christina Watterson, who is also known as the Karate Hottie. Or Michelle Watterson, sorry. The boxers that are going to be on it, Evander Holyfield, former welterweight champion Sean Showtime Porter, former guest of ours, WBC President Mauricio Suleiman, and undefeated 21-year-old Ryan Kingery Garcia. But here's the one that I'm worried about. Also is going to be on the panel is former heavyweight champion Riddick Big Daddy Bowe.
Oh, man. Oh, wow. Wow.
And
wow.
We interviewed him, and from what I remember, he was not very easy to understand. He was very slow, very tough to distinguish the words, and then at one point he even said something about fighting me. Like, why don't I fight you next?
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I pissed him off.
And I remember even 15 years ago, and he had to have a trailer for his words. That's really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll go, and then it would have that trailer with the words underneath. Yeah, that's terrible to get like that.
I remember we laughed when he laughed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you could. That was before I was on the show, but that's all you could do.
Yeah. So here's one of the last news stories.
If we could have, I would like to set up a talk-off between two of our more difficult to understand guests. Imagine a conversation between Riddick Bowe and Peter McNeely.
Peter was better. Peter, I thought, was better.
Peter McNeely, I said, hey, Peter. He's like, said something like, I'm 40 years old. He's like, what? I'm like, didn't you ask me how old I was?
Mm-hmm.
No, I asked, how are you?
Yeah, that could have been a connection issue, but it's a little bit more than just the boxing, though. Because my sister actually used to go to Salem State College, and he used to hang out there. And from what I hear, back then, he was very big into the drug scene. He was always drinking. He was always riling people up and causing trouble. And all of my sister's friends were always like, oh, man, we should jump him. so we could say we beat up Peter McNeely. But he also, right now, I think, has some alcohol issues. But other than that, yeah, he's just very hard to understand. Another big story that came up this week, it might actually lead to an interview on our show, because this is a situation where I met sort of a kindred spirit, and a real spirit is part of it, I guess, because it's a story about Tommy Morrison and his widow Trisha, and she has had the case reopened against the Nevada Commission and I think some other defendants, based on their denial of a license to Tommy for testing positive for the HIV virus. And this is a diagnosis Morrison always denied. He actually had a radio show interview that he did with a couple guys, like, I want to say a couple weeks or a month before he died. And he basically laid it all out and said that, number one, he never believed that HIV was even a real disease. And number two, he never really had it, because all they could do was give him one test that said that he would have to take the next test to rule it out, and the next test always failed, or it was always negative. So he would get through the first test, and they would say, "Oh, you need to take the second test," and then the second test would always come out with no results. So it's just he believes the whole AIDS HIV thing is a giant conspiracy, or he believed it before he died. Probably still believes it now in the afterlife too. But so he publicly said that. But he was forced out of the sport until he had a brief comeback, and that was in 2007. But he died in 2013 at the age of 44. And his wife has never once wavered in her adamance that he was never HIV positive. And asking for the case to be reopened, she had the courts deliberating over this for weeks. And then the case will now be considered. And the kicker is she's representing herself. So I had to send her my book on how to represent yourself in court. And she asked me if I had heard any of her other interviews, but I didn't even know she had done any of them. So I'll have to look that up. But all her court paperwork is online there, and it's pretty decent stuff. So she knows what she's doing, and that will definitely be an interesting thing to follow and see how that works out, because it's definitely something that needs to be done right there. And I actually remember, I had to look it up, but I remember at the time, Fight News Unlimited was very young as a website, but we actually had a staff. We had like 4 or 5 writers who just wanted to get published somewhere. And one of them, Charlie Schmidt, I think, he was like a humor writer or something for us. He wrote these just backwards, outrageous, crazy articles, almost like The Onion, but they were based on reality. And Charlie wrote an article about it, and wrote an article about the HIV thing. And Randy Lang, who was the manager and lawyer, supposedly, for Tommy, put a comment on it. And then I started communicating with Randy, and he offered to help out with some of the stuff on the Zions case, but then he kind of disappeared on me. So I was just like, wow, small world. And then I come to find out Randy lied to everybody. He never was even a lawyer at all. So I didn't even know that at the time. I just found that out. So that was kind of a shocker. Anyway, one more story. One more MMA story, and then we'll go to results and recaps, or previews and recaps, I should say. There's a guy named Michael Nates, allegedly attacked a Miami police officer as soon as they removed his handcuffs this past Wednesday. And the Miami Herald decided to say that this guy was named Nate Diaz. Or Nick Diaz, I guess, yeah. No, Nate Diaz. So, basically, social media went off and decided to post it everywhere. and basically they're going to explore legal action. Because that's definitely a bad case of misidentification. But, yeah. And we had over the weekend, we had UFC 167. Jan Blachowicz getting the win over Corey Anderson in their rematch, and it was quick. 3 minutes and 8 seconds into round one. So Jan Blachowicz has immediately decided to call out John Jones. We'll see if that happens. And then there's a little controversy in the co-main event between Diego Sanchez and Michael Pereira. Not because it was a disqualification ending. An illegal knee ended it in the third round. But because of the coaching between rounds and the reputation there of Diego Sanchez's trainer. This is kind of a funny story. They were apparently talking some kind of code between rounds, and some of the commentators on the broadcast were very critical of the coaching style of Diego's coach. I mean, he doesn't have a very traditional background, and obviously, Diego wasn't doing very well. He was losing the fight, but ended up getting very lucky with the disqualification. But apparently, another thing came out today after this was hashed out in the media about this event. And it was about Diego's last fight with Michael Chiesa, when the same coach apparently went to the commission and told them that Diego could kill Michael in this fight because they had been working a new choke move and it could kill somebody. So apparently Chiesa found out about it before the fight and just laughed. But the Nevada officials were really close to calling off the fight because of the concern. And somebody actually had to come up to Diego and explain to him, this is a sportsmanship oriented sport. You don't go out there intentionally wanting to hurt people like that. Or kill them. It's probably not a good idea. But actually, they played they put the commentary from between rounds, the instructions, into a video, and I listened to it, and I really don't see the big issue. The most confusing thing I heard on there was he said to Diego, "Let's get sticky," and they couldn't figure out what that meant. But right after that, he said, keep close and try to take him down. Don't let him get into range, basically. And it's just that's just their way of talking. They're on a different wavelength. That's all. Whether he's a good coach or not, I don't know. I guess the jury's still out on that until Diego gets a win under him. But I really don't see the big deal. I mean, so what? The guy talks a little different. But when I saw that extra report about the death move, I was like, yeah, well, maybe there's something to this. But anyway, definitely a big step down from Jackson Wink to that. We also had Montana De La Rosa winning a unanimous decision over Mara Romero Barella. Brock Weaver winning over Rodrigo Vargas by another disqualification, an illegal knee as well, 4 minutes and 2 seconds into round one. We had Ray Borg over Rogerio Bontorin by unanimous decision. Lando Venata over Yancy Medeiros by UD. Daniel Rodriguez over Tim Means by guillotine choke, 3 minutes and 37 seconds into round two. And John Dodson back in the winning column with a TKO, just 16 seconds into round three over Nathaniel Wood. Scott Holtzman over Jim Miller by unanimous decision. Devin Clark over Daquan Townsend, also by UD. And then Merab Devalishvili over Casey Kenny by unanimous decision. Macy Chason over Shanna Young by unanimous decision. And then the first fight of the night, Raulian Paiva over Mark De La Rosa by knockout in the second round from punches, 4 minutes and 42 seconds in. And we'll save the upcoming ones for last tonight. Let's recap the boxing last week real quick. We had sort of an upset, I guess. Thomas Matisse falling to Isaac Cruz Gonzalez on Friday. That was pretty much the big day for all the fights. The biggest one on Saturday was Caleb Plant beating Vincent Fagenboots. And I watched that one. I watched a lot of that. And, boy, Caleb Plant has the quickness.
Yeah.
He was
I
landing.
was at Las Vegas this weekend, so I didn't see any fights.
Right. I'll tell you, the speed and accuracy was the most impressive thing watching that fight. And Fagan Boots was really, showed a lot of heart, but was really outmatched. He just had nothing. And I believe it was like 20 or 30, between 20 and 30 punches landed every round for Caleb, and Fagan Boots was in the single digits almost every round. It was bad. It was a totally one-sided beatdown. And I was really surprised Caleb just didn't knock him out sooner, or get the job completely done. But definitely a good fight for him, and he'll be looking for bigger opportunities coming up. Also, we had Ryan Garcia beating Francisco Fonseca, and I believe Garcia actually, we just mentioned him because he's on the Family Feud show, and I believe that appearance that he had on the show was like the day after this fight, because it was a quick knockout. So it was pretty cool. Jorge Linares over Carlos Morales as well, and Alex Rocha over Brad Solomon. And then this weekend, the big fights are again on Saturday. And there's one at the top of the list for Saturday that's not really anything special, but I just thought I'd mention it. I guess you could call it the mismatch of the week. And it's for a title. Even though the guy's not really an opponent-type opponent with a ton of losses and no wins. This guy is 11-11-3, and he's fighting for a title. And Marcelo Fabian Bizowski. Like Bozo, BZ, BZO. Bizowski. He's fighting for the vacant World Boxing Association Fedibol Super Welterweight title. He's fighting a guy named Gerardo Luis Vergara, who is undefeated, 12-0. So I guess, that's definitely a mismatch. I've never seen a name like that, though. Bizowski. I think the real Bozo the Clown, just died, too. I believe I read that.
I heard that.
Bozo the Clown. That's a blast from the past. That was one of those shows that was on when I was so young, I barely remember it. The only thing I remember is his sidekick, Willie Whistle. Anyway. Let's find the big ones. A lot of 2 and 3 fight cards here this week. Here's one from the Ukraine on Saturday at the Ice Palace Terminal, whatever that is. Denis Buranchik at lightweight. He's 12-0, fighting Hector Edgardo Sarmiento, who's 21-1, fighting for the WBO International Lightweight title. And the co-main event is super middleweights Maxim Bursak, 35-6 with 2 draws, fighting Maxim, spelled a different way, Smirnov, who is 8-5-3. So that's kind of a little bit of a mismatch. Fights in the UK. They always put the good ones at the very bottom. Oh boy, here's I don't even know what to call this. I don't know if it's a mismatch or just the most disappointing on paper fight you could think of right here. Just stumbled on this one. Oh, now I'm way back to the top. Where is it? Alright. Down in Tunica, Mississippi on Saturday, we got Dedrick Bell coming in at 23-32-1, fighting Clifford McPherson, who has a record of 2 wins, 39 losses, and 1 draw. That's the main event. Then you got the co-main event, middleweights, Eric Draper, 12-10 with 1 draw, fighting Bobby Watson, who's 0-11.
Oh, and what?
0-11. There's not a single person in the right-hand column who has a winning record. this entire card. There's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fighters with 0 wins out of 12, it looks like. 12 fights. And then the big one, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. This is our somebody's O's gotta go fight. They both got 1 draw, and it's to each other. Against each other, I should say. Deontay has a few more wins. He's 42-0. Tyson is 29-0 other than the time. But Tyson had some time off. You gotta give him that. Not good time off in some respects, but it was like almost 3 years, right? I want to say.
Yeah, really, because it was like 2015 was his fight with Klitschko, and then it was shortly after that where he went into basically mental depression, substance abuse. He was up there over 400 pounds. And, a lot of people don't take into consideration, those 3 things will age you quickly. The drinking, the substance abuse, the weight gain, the mental depression. Those things will age you. So, that's always interesting to see if that has any effect on them.
Right. And the co-main event, Charles Martin, 27-2-1, fighting Gerald Washington. 20 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw there. And both of them have lost a few in their last 6, so this is kind of a toss-up here. But definitely a good heavyweight support bout for the main event. And then you got a title on the line. In the next fight, super bantamweight, Emmanuel Navarrete. He is 30-1, fighting Gio Santizema, who is 19-2. No vacancy. World Boxing Organization World Super Bantamweight title is on the line there. And we got Amir Ahmed Imam, 22-2, at welterweight, fighting Javier Molina, who is 21-2. Isaac Lowe, 19-0-3, fighting Alberto Guevara, who's 27-5. And might as well mention this one too. Subriel Matias, who is 15-0, fighting Petros Ananya, who is 14-2-2. Yeah, this is a good one on the deep undercard here. Gabriel Flores Jr., 16-0 against Matt Conway, who's 17-1. And you gotta love this guy's name, Vito Mielnicki Jr. Not his name. He is 4-0, but he's fighting a guy named Corey Champion. That's what his record is, 1-2. He's not starting out well.
I was going to say something like 0-31.
Corey Champion of losing. And then tomorrow night we have Bellator going on. We're back in action after a little bit of a hiatus. We got Ed Ruth in the main event, fighting off a big challenger here. I mean, we'll see if it's more than he can chew, but Yaroslav Amosov. I haven't heard of him, but he's undefeated at 22-0. Ed Ruth is 8-1, and he was supposed to be the be-all, end-all of wrestling crossovers. But he has that 1 loss. And other than that, he's done pretty well for himself. But this is obviously going to be a pretty big challenge for him, not only being in the main event, but also fighting an undefeated guy here. And then we got Miles Jury crossing over from the UFC to Bellator. Has had a couple ups and downs, but looks to really get going here against Brandon Gertz. Miles is 17-5. Brandon is 16-8. That should be a real good one. We got Tyrell Fortune, 8-0, fighting Timothy Johnson, 12-6. Javi Ayala, who's 11-7, fighting Valentin Moldavsky, who's 8-1. Christian Edwards, 2-0, against DeMarco Hutchinson, 3-2. Keith Lee, 5-3, fighting Sean Bunch, who's 9-4. Denise Kielholtz, 4-2, fighting Christina Williams, who's 3-2. Gaston Bolanos versus Chris Hatley. Bolanos is 5-2, Hatley is 7-2. Josh Hill, 18-3, against Vinicius Zaney, who's 11-5. And we'll go through the rest of them. And we also have UFC Fight Night 168 coming up this weekend on Saturday. from New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. Paul Felder in the main event, 17-4 against Dan Hooker, 19-8. And we got Jim Crute, who is 10-1, fighting Michael Oleksijuk. Probably just butchered that. He is 14-3. And here's one, just because I've heard it pronounced already, I can get. Carolina Kowalkiewicz. She is 12-5, fighting Xiaonan Yan, who is 11-1. Third fight of the night, or third to the main event, I should say. Ben Sosoli, 7-2, fighting Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who's 16-6-1. We got Magomed Mustafayev, who is 14-2, against Brad Riddle, who's 7-1. We got Zubaira Tukagov, 18-4, fighting Kevin Aguilar, who's 17-2. Joshua Kulibayo, 8-0, fighting Jalen Turner, 8-5. Jake Matthews on the card, 15-4, fighting Emil Meek. That's not a very good name for a fighter. He's 9-4. Callan Potter, who is 18-8, fighting Keenan Song, who's 15-5. Kai Kara France on the fourth fight of the night. He is 20-8, fighting Tyson Nam, who is 18-10-1. Konkiak Sufisara, 4-1, fighting Angela Hill, who's 11-7. And the second fight of the night, Mark Patolo, 12-5, fighting Takashi Sato, who's 15-3. Another female fight, Shayna Dobson, 3-3, fighting Priscilla Cachoeira, who is 8-3. I guess that about does it for this week. Until next week, hopefully we'll have this situation squared away with the recording. We had a lot more content we had to let go tonight, but at least we caught it. It wasn't a complete ruin. And until next week, adios.
Hey guys.
All right. Article will be there tomorrow.
And hopefully we'll have a guest. I don't know if it's going to be... I've got my buddy lined up. He wants to talk about one of his charities. And I also got Trisha Morrison, possibly. So we'll see
cool.
which one of them gets the nod. Maybe we might either do Trisha next week or Trisha the following week, but we'll figure it out. Thanks for stopping by.
All right.
All right, adios, guys.